the species that endured. The Galactic Assembly Chamber was designed to impress and to intimidate. Its vaulted arcs of light curved above 1,000 delegates, each platform calibrated to the biology and ego of its occupant. Gravity shifted subtly from tier to tier. Atmospheres blended and separated in invisible membranes. At the center, the Council's sigil burned like a cold star. Humanity sat near the outer ring, not exiled, not honored, simply placed where latecomers belonged. Councillor Threx of the Korlothi Compact let his frilled crest flare with amusement as the session turned, inevitably, to Earth. "The humans have filed another petition," he rasped, his translator smoothing the sound into something almost polite, "regarding trade corridor violations." Again, soft laughter rippled across the chamber. "They are very persistent," added Envoy Silith, a willowy being whose species measured time in millennia. One must admire that, even after 3 centuries of disappointment. The chamber's gaze flicked briefly toward the human platform. Ambassador Mara Cade sat perfectly still, hands folded, posture neutral. She did not interrupt. Humans rarely did anymore. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage 412 standard years ago, late cautious, scarred by its own violent adolescence. They came not as conquerors, but as petitioners. They brought mathematics refined by war, medicine born of desperation, and a political doctrine obsessed with restraint. They called it lessons learned. At first, the galaxy had welcomed them. Then it tested them. Human shipping lanes were rerouted temporarily and never restored. Border colonies were designated buffer zones during interstellar disputes. Human tariffs rose, while others mysteriously fell. When human captains protested inspections that lingered too long and seized too much, the Council cited procedure, and humanity complied. They lodged complaints, filed appeals, revised treaties, paid reparations even when wronged. Their fleets remained small, defensive, and meticulously documented. Their diplomats spoke of cooperation, precedent, and shared futures. The galaxy learned something dangerous in those years. Humans could endure. They are emotional creatures, Threx continued, waving a taloned hand dismissively, yet endlessly forgiving. A paradox that resolves itself when one understands fear. Fear of extinction, Silith agreed. They remember their near misses vividly. Mara Cade's eyes did not move, but her jaw tightened by a fraction. What the Council never understood was that humanity's restraint was not fear. It was practice. On Earth, history was taught as a ledger of costs. Every war annotated. Every atrocity examined until it hurt. Humanity did not forget easily, and because of that, it learned to pause, to measure, to wait. Patience to humans was not passive. It was active containment. The Assembly moved on. Another vote passed, authorizing a security action near the Perseus Fringe. Human colonies lay there, thinly protected. The motion carried overwhelmingly. No human objection was raised. Later, in the quiet corridors beyond the chamber, a junior aide hurried to Mara Cade's side. His face was pale. "They approved it," he whispered. "The escort exemption, too." Mara nodded once. "Send the transcript to Earth." "Yes, Ambassador." "And the convoy?" Her pause was brief, but absolute. "Status unchanged," she said. "Presumed lost." The relief convoy Mercy of Dawn had been dispatched under Council authorization. Medical supplies, evacuation craft, unarmed. It never reached the Perseus colonies. Official reports cited pirate activity. Unofficial sensor logs, buried, classified, ignored, showed military signatures. Boarding actions, executions after surrender. Earth had submitted the evidence 3 times. The Council archived it twice and dismissed it once. That night, Mara Cade stood alone in her quarters, staring at the faint blue hologram of Earth rotating slowly above her desk. She recorded a message, not for the Assembly, but for the historical record. "Humanity acknowledges the Council's decision," she said evenly. "We recognize the patterns now. This statement constitutes our final appeal under Article 17 and all related accords." She hesitated, then added something unscripted. "Patience is not consent," she said, "and silence is not surrender." The message was transmitted, logged, and largely ignored. Across human space, something shifted. Research stations recalled personnel. Joint exercises were canceled without explanation. Trade fleets rerouted inward. Data traffic spiked, then vanished behind encryption walls older than most council species. Alien analysts noticed, but misread it. Internal instability, they concluded. Retrenchment. Decline. On Earth, in chambers far deeper than the Assembly's grand halls, humanity reviewed its own ledger. Every insult logged. Every name recorded. Every chance given. The tally was complete. And for the first time since leaving its cradle, humanity stopped asking the galaxy to listen. It simply began to prepare. The silence after the warnings. Silence unsettled the galaxy far more than outrage ever had. For centuries, humanity had been predictable in its responses. Protests arrived on schedule. Legal challenges followed precise formats. Diplomatic envoys requested hearings, clarifications, reviews. Even their anger was procedural. Then, without announcement, it stopped. The human delegation withdrew from the Galactic Assembly. No speeches, no condemnation. Their platform dimmed, its atmospheric field disengaged as if it had never been there. The chair remained empty through 3 full sessions before anyone bothered to ask why. Budgetary issues, speculated one counselor. Political fragmentation, suggested another. No one considered danger. In the border systems near human space, commerce slowed. Freight captains reported unusual rerouting advisories issued by human traffic authorities, temporary closures, safety concerns, maintenance anomalies. The notices were polite, detailed, and impossible to contest. Entire hyperlane clusters fell quiet. At first, neighboring civilizations welcomed the absence. Human patrols had always been irritatingly thorough, their captains insisting on mutual verification and civilian safeguards. Without them, movement was faster, less regulated, more profitable, until it wasn't. Fuel depots that had relied on human synthesis algorithms began experiencing inexplicable inefficiencies. Supply forecasts drifted off by single-digit percentages, small enough to dismiss, large enough to cascade. Insurance markets adjusted. Transit times lengthened. Still, no alarms sounded. The first to truly notice was not a counselor, but an analyst. Taylor Vinn belonged to the Lithry Directorate, a minor polity known for information brokerage rather than military power. His role was simple: monitor irregularities along major trade arteries and flag patterns. Human space had become one. Gravitational telemetry near the Perseus fringe showed fluctuations inconsistent with natural phenomena or known drives. Not spikes, absences, as if mass had been briefly present, then deliberately removed. Communications pings sent toward human relay stations returned acknowledgments without content. Polite, empty. Taylor compiled his findings and forwarded them up his chain. They were ignored. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity spoke to itself. For the first time in its long, divided history, governments dissolved without protest. Borders lost relevance as command structures merged. Old rivalries were archived, not erased, remembered but set aside. Humanity had learned long ago that unity, forged in rage, shattered quickly. This unity was built in quiet agreement. Fleet yards that had once constructed defensive cruisers began laying down hulls of unfamiliar geometry, vessels designed not for presence, but for arrival. Research facilities went dark to outside observers, their energy signatures masked behind civilian-level emissions. Human engineers worked without slogans, only ledgers. The evidence from the Mercy of Dawn convoy had not been forgotten. It had been dissected, every frame of footage reconstructed, every voice identified, every chain of command traced, not just to officers, but to the legal doctrines that protected them. Humanity did not ask who pulled the trigger. It asked who allowed it. A single message was transmitted beyond human space during that period. It went to an independent trade coalition with historic ties to Earth. The content was brief. Move your people. Timeline: 30 days. No further warnings. The coalition complied. Others did not. In the assembly, concern finally surfaced when sensor arrays along 3 major sectors failed simultaneously. Not destroyed, not jammed, simply blind. Technicians worked frantically, recalibrating instruments that insisted everything was normal, while showing nothing at all. It was as if space itself had become selectively unobservable. Emergency sessions were called. "Is this a human action?" someone asked, half amused. "No," Threx replied confidently. "They lack the capacity and the will." Ambassador Silith hesitated. "They warned us." The chamber stilled. "Warnings are meaningless if never enforced," Threx snapped. "Humans prefer words. Always have." Even as he spoke, long-range sensors flickered back to life, just long enough to register something impossible. Dozens of mass signatures appeared at the edge of known space, inside established borders, then vanished. Panic rippled, contained only by disbelief. Taylor Venn watched the data cascade across his console, heart racing. The patterns were clear now, too clear. These were not incursions. They were rehearsals. He transmitted an urgent report directly to the assembly, bypassing protocol. It contained a single conclusion: humanity has finished waiting. Before any response could be drafted, every public human channel across the galaxy went live for exactly 6 seconds. No image, no emblem, only text, rendered in flawless universal translation. The record is closed. Then the channels went dark. Across the galaxy, fleets sat fueled but directionless. Commanders waited for orders that never came. Markets trembled. Borders felt suddenly fragile. And in the silence after the warnings, the galaxy finally began to understand. Humanity was no longer asking to be heard. It was deciding who would remember. The breaking point. The first collapse did not look like war. There were no alarms, no massed fleets colliding in fire, no declarations transmitted in righteous fury. Instead, a logistics hub in the Korlothi Compact failed its routine synchronization check. One of thousands performed every cycle. Its quantum ledger did not reconcile. Fuel inventories showed negative values. Transit authorizations contradicted one another. Automated systems, designed to prevent catastrophic error, shut themselves down to preserve integrity. Within hours, 3 more hubs followed. By the time the Korlothi realized what was happening, their border fleets were drifting, fully armed, fully crewed, and utterly dependent on supply lines that no longer existed. Across the galaxy, the same pattern unfolded. Hyperlane anchors slipped out of alignment by fractions too small to detect manually, yet large enough to make transit suicidal. Military-grade reactors refused to accept command codes that had governed them for centuries. Navigation beacons broadcasted perfect lies. No explosions, no casualties, just paralysis. The Galactic Assembly convened in emergency session, voices overlapping in panic and disbelief. Data flooded the chamber, each report worse than the last. "This is sabotage," Threx roared, his crest flaring violently. "Find the human fleets and engage them." "They aren't on sensors," came the reply. They were never on sensors. That was when the first human ship appeared. It did not emerge from hyperspace or fold into existence with a flare of energy. It was simply there, coasting above a Korlothi military shipyard, its silhouette angular and mad, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Then another appeared, and another. Within minutes, hundreds of human vessels occupied strategic positions across Korlothi space, above shipyards, command relays, weapons platforms. Always silent, always already inside defensive perimeters. Humanity had not broken the rules of war. It had studied them until it found the spaces between. The first shots fired were precise, almost surgical. Kinetic strikes severed docking spines. Directed energy sliced through shield projectors without breaching hulls. Command ships lost propulsion, then power, then communications, in that order. No escape pods were targeted. No civilian sectors touched. A single broadcast cut through all channels, human in origin, unencrypted. This is not retaliation. This is correction. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched in horror as the same pattern repeated. Fleets disabled without warning. Defense grids turned inward and shut down. Officers found themselves alive, uninjured, and utterly defeated. Some attempted resistance. It lasted minutes. Human war doctrine was terrifying not because of its violence, but because of its restraint. Every engagement demonstrated overwhelming superiority paired with deliberate limitation. They could destroy. They chose not to. The civilization responsible for the Mercy of Dawn massacre was the last to fall. Their capital world had been fortified for centuries. Layered shields, orbital weapons, fleets stacked in defensive depth. Humanity ignored it all. Instead, they struck the legal core. Data archives were exposed to the public. Internal communications, once classified, flooded open channels. Orders authorizing the convoy's destruction. Signatures intact. Justification arguments preserved. The galaxy watched the truth unfold in real time. Human ships appeared above the capital, not in attack formation, but in witness. A message followed, addressed not to the government, but to the people. We have no war with you. Your leaders will answer. Military commanders attempted a coup. Their ships went dark. Political leaders tried to flee. Their transports refused to jump. Human ground forces landed only once control was absolute. They did not occupy cities. They occupied courtrooms. Trials were conducted using the civilization's own legal framework, translated faithfully, applied without modification. Charges were read. Evidence presented. Defense permitted. Sentences were carried out by local authorities under human observation. The message was unmistakable. Humanity did not seek domination. It sought precedent. In the Galactic Assembly, what remained of the Council sat in stunned silence. The rules they had written to shield themselves had been turned inside out, used not as weapons, but as mirrors. Ambassador Syleth finally spoke, her voice trembling. They never snapped, she said. They planned. Taylor Vinn watched from his station as galactic power structures unraveled. Entire empires sued for ceasefire without ever having fought. Others preemptively dismantled oppressive doctrines, hoping, desperately, that it would be enough. Human fleets did not pursue fleeing ships. They waited. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the campaign slowed. Human vessels held position. No new systems fell. No further strikes were launched. Another broadcast echoed across every channel, calmer than the last. The breaking point has passed. Remember what came after. And for the first time in its long history, the galaxy understood the true meaning of human patience. Not an absence of strength, but the decision to unleash it only once. What the galaxy learned to remember. The war ended without a victory parade. There were no conquered worlds bearing human banners, no tribute fleets bound for Earth, no declarations of supremacy carved into asteroids or stars. One moment, human warships occupied the most sensitive positions in known space. The next, they were gone, withdrawn as cleanly and quietly as they had arrived. What remained was not ruin. It was absence. Empires that had once relied on intimidation found their fleets intact, but unusable, their command hierarchies dismantled by law rather than force. Trade resumed cautiously, guided by new regulations that no one had voted on but everyone obeyed. They came attached to a document. It was delivered simultaneously to every recognized civilization, translated into all known languages, and archived in every major data repository before any government could suppress it. The title was simple, The Patience Accords. The preamble was shorter still. Humanity does not seek rule. Humanity seeks limits. The Accords established principles the galaxy had long pretended to uphold but never enforced. Civilian immunity was absolute. Surrender was sacred. Restraint was not exploitable. Violations would not trigger war. They would trigger response. Proportional. Documented. Inevitable. The Council attempted to reassert itself, convening under emergency protocols. The chamber felt smaller now, its grandeur diminished by memory. Empty platforms testified to dissolved regimes and disgraced delegations. When the human delegation returned, there was no ceremony. Ambassador Mara Cade took her seat where it had always been. Outer ring, same gravity, same atmosphere. No demands were made for elevation. That was perhaps the most unsettling thing of all. Councillor Threx did not attend. His government no longer existed in any functional form. The Korlathi Compact survived, reduced, and restructured, its military doctrine rewritten under external supervision. Not human, but mutual. Fear had given way to caution. Caution to respect. Debate followed. Some called the Accord an overreach. Others called them salvation. No one dared call them optional. A junior delegate from a newly independent system asked the question no one else would voice. What happens, she said carefully, if humanity reaches its breaking point again? Mara Cade stood. Her voice carried without amplification. There will not be a second time, she said, because this time you learned. Outside the assembly, historians struggled to name what had occurred. It was not conquest. It was not rebellion. It was not even war in the traditional sense. It was an intervention by a species that had finally accepted a truth it had long avoided, that patience, when infinite, becomes permission. Humanity had withdrawn again, but not into isolation. It resumed trade, rejoined scientific initiatives, offered aid to systems destabilized by the collapse of old powers. But the terms were different now. Every treaty included enforcement clauses written in unmistakably human language, precise, exhaustive, unforgiving. Every alliance carried a quiet understanding. Humans would wait, negotiate, compromise. Once, in academic circles, a new phrase entered common use. The breaking point doctrine. It described a civilization that endured until endurance itself became harmful, not just to itself, but to the order around it. When action finally came, it was not emotional but ethical, decisive but bounded. A final scene unfolded months later. In the rebuilt Assembly Hall, a new installation was unveiled. It was not grand, a simple plaque mounted near the central dais, rendered in neutral material, immune to corrosion. It bore no symbols, only words. Patience is not weakness. Restraint is not surrender. And silence is not forgiveness. Below, in smaller script, another line appeared, added at the request of multiple civilizations. No civilization will forget the day humanity reached the breaking point of its patience. Mara Cade paused before it as the chamber emptied. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of what had been done. Not pride, not triumph, but relief. Humanity had not lost itself to anger. It had found itself in resolve. As Earth turned quietly beneath distant stars, humanity returned to what it had always done best after catastrophe. Remember, rebuild, and watch. The galaxy, changed forever, did the same. And this time it remembered why.